there, and welcome to the Fearless Artist Podcast, where we empower classical musicians to build their own thriving careers. I'm your host, Michelle Lynne, and together with Deanna Petre, we teach artists to conquer the entrepreneurial side of their careers and create the futures they want. We are two freelance classical musicians who have lived and worked in Europe for a decade, and together we started the Fearless Artist Mastermind, a coaching company created to teach classical musicians how to overcome fear and take action on building their dream careers. In each episode, we will explore the intersection of artistry and entrepreneurship, teaching you the fearless mindset with practical steps and strategies to build a sustainable career. Get ready to build your own artistic brand, find a supportive community of musicians so that you don't have to figure out everything alone, and earn a living that you deserve. We believe that you can be a thriving artist and not a starving one, and we are redefining what it means to be a classical musician in the modern era. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Fearless Artist Podcast. My name is Michelle Lynne, and today I'm so thankful to have my new friend, Dr. Heidi Kay Begay. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Michelle.
So I'm really thrilled to have you because so many of our community members already know you. They have followed you for years. You have quite the bio, which I'll let you share a bit about your 4 businesses. And I love that you said you are a passionate serial entrepreneur, because I think that's something a lot of musicians have, is multiple passions, multiple interests, and then a matter of like, how do I organize my life? How do I split myself into all of these different pieces? Because I've got so many things that I want to do. And with that is also like overcoming the mindset of you have to just be one thing or else you're serious enough. I mean, so I feel like there's so much to kind of unpack in there, but you have your podcast, you teach other people how to make their own podcasts, you're a flutist, you're an educator, you speak at conferences. So I would love to hear about you and your career.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. Well, that's basically the introduction. I am a multi-passionate serial entrepreneur, and I lead with that because I have to remind myself I'm not just a flutist. I'm not just a music teacher, but look at my overall business portfolio. And you're right. It is really challenging to feel at times as an individual, like you could be spread too thin, right? Because you're like, I'm a musician, I'm a coach, I'm a music teacher, I'm a performer, and you can easily burn that candle from 10 different ends and think, oh my gosh, where am I? Who am I? What am I doing? So a little bit of a backstory for me before we get into the business portfolio and how to manage that for your listeners if they are interested in really pursuing entrepreneurship, which I know you promote. Yeah. I'm from Chicago, and I started off as a pianist, actually, and I did ballet.
Whoa.
Yeah, I did ballet, and I took it very seriously, and piano. And then around 13, I transitioned into flute because I had an injury in my ballet career. And I was drawn to the instrument. And since then, I've done the traditional path like every musician out there has done. The degrees, built up a studio, got the terminal degree, and now I am overseeing 4 different businesses. So that's a quick nutshell of bringing us up to 2024 of what I've done these past 20, 25 years professionally.
Wow, that's amazing. So most of our community knows you from the Flute 360. I would love for you to share about that. And I think that's actually how I discovered you. I was looking through different podcasts, and then I heard you speaking, and I was, first of all, blown away that you've been doing it. How many episodes? Over 300?
About 315 episodes.
That's so impressive. I mean, just for everyone listening, I was just on Heidi's podcast a few days ago, and I'm a newbie, and she's been doing this forever and coaches other people how to get into podcasting. So to know that you've done 350, I mean, I've done, I think, 14.
That's an amazing start, because a lot of podcasters, they do not get over the hump of episode 7. So you're past the hump. So congratulations. That is a big feat.
What gets people stuck at 7?
I think it's the budget. I think they feel, like we were saying pre-recording, they feel too spread thin, and they kind of question, like, why am I doing this? I'm putting a lot of money into this. I'm putting a lot of time and energy into this, and I'm not seeing a quick return. In podcasting, if you're going to start up a podcast, here's a gem for all of you listeners out there. Podcasting is a long game that you go into. It's not a quick, like Facebook ad or ad that you run through Google. You're in it for the long haul. So if you're going to start up a podcast, just know that those results will be there, but it won't be such a quick return like a Google ad. And that's okay. But there is a return, and you are building a community, and there's a lot of benefits to podcasting. And so I think a lot of podcasters fizzle out at episode 7 is because they are expecting something else from podcasting too quick, too soon, and then they get discouraged. And I think that's when they drop out.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. We also teach the same concepts with our social media strategy when we get people coming into our sprint program, because they also think, okay, I've never posted before. Now I'm going to start posting, and suddenly the views and the likes and the engagement and the comments will flood my, because they're like, I'm finally being vulnerable and putting myself out there after maybe months or years of holding themselves back. So we're really encouraging them, like, okay, we accompany you for the first 6 weeks. And then after that, it's about creating a repeatable, easy strategies that you can continue for the long game, as you're saying, to put yourself out there and see that community building. You mentioned that already. What are some other results that you've seen from 300 episodes of podcasting?
Oh my gosh. Growth in me as a person, growth in me as a musician. I am the most artistic and free in my artistic decisions because I am a podcast host.
Oh, whoa. I need you to unpack all of that. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's so funny because, in my late 30s, and I'm teaching a thriving studio, and you hear your past teachers' voices in your head, right? And I've had phenomenal mentors trying to get me off the page, trying to help me to be authentic, try to, really trust my artistic voice through my flute, and trying to unleash that through drawing and painting and dancing and things like that. And now that I'm a teacher, I can see their faces, I can see their expression, I can hear their words now and go, oh, that's what they were trying to get me to do. But it wasn't until the podcast gave me permission outside of my faith. The podcast gave me permission to get off the page and to not be afraid of mistakes, to not be afraid of being vulnerable through that phrase, through the movement of the sonata. And it's because there's a lot of layers to this, Michelle, but a lot of it is just learning what my voice is, and being okay with my quirkiness, my wittiness, my dorkiness, and knowing, like, I talk with my hands, I like talking with my face, and I have facial expressions, and I'm not a Peter Jennings, suit and tie and being all stuffy. So I think a lot of musicians, if you are dealing with performance anxiety, it's probably because it could be that you feel like you have to sound like this great music idol that you have put up on a pedestal. You think and you feel like you should sound like these mentors that you respect oh so much. And that's fantastic. That's a great place to start if you don't know what your voice is or how to express your voice, to kind of copy and replicate, what you've heard. But at some point, if you kind of go out there and you are being in the shoes of your mentor and trying to copy what they did through the Bach sonatas, you're going to feel like you're always comparing yourself to them. And you can't fully just unleash and be free to say what you want to say in that specific piece. So full circle, podcasting gave me a space to say, wait a second, because I would get really afraid, Michelle. Like, I speak to some like big dogs in the flute community, people who play with the Vienna Philharmonic, Berlin, and you go into those sessions and I'm like, I'm just Heidi. Oh my gosh, who am I to talk to Sebastian Jacot? This is insane. But once you get into that space, you realize, one, they are a human being. They have their own fears. Right. They have imposter syndrome. They have the negative talk. They've gone through hurdles. And we don't see that sometimes, right? Because we, again, rightfully so to a certain degree, we put them on pedestals because they've accomplished so much. And we admire that and we respect that work. But at the end of the day, we forget that they are human. And so when you are in a conversation with somebody through podcasting like that, you're like, oh my gosh, they have fears too. They have a family, they have cats, they have dogs. And then you realize there are so many similarities between me and that person, more similarities than differences. I can take up healthy space and learn how to express myself in my most true, authentic form.
Wow, that's amazing. To bring in the authenticity that you have found, finding your own voice in a speaking way, bringing that into your music. It's amazing lateral thinking, bringing the same concept in. I don't know if I've made that connection yet in between my speaking career and my performing career, but I definitely understand the authenticity. And I also have a lot of movement when I perform, which I've sometimes felt like, do I need to hold back? Am I too much? And then I'm like, no, I'm just going to go for it. And, Jeff, ironically, has encouraged me in this as well, because Jeff has a big program about helping musicians be authentic on stage, being intentional to connect with audiences, being yourself. So it sounds like you're taking this really healthy, authentic concept and just applying it to every area of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to. I'm not perfect, but I do try to. And just the concept and the notion of storytelling in podcasting. I mean, what do we do as musicians? We tell stories.
Yeah.
We share stories. We share stories from Bach, Mozart, Chaminade. We get to share their stories from the 17th, 18th centuries. We get to share modern composers and their stories from the 20th, 21st century. And then we get to infuse it with our stories and how we interpret the work. And so being able to express those stories with articulation and with some sort of poise and with some sort of organization, that's podcasting and learning how to form that sentence from beginning, middle to end. That's a phrase. Being in an ebb and flow, like I was on a podcast show yesterday, and their style and demeanor is completely different than yours. And that's okay. We have a different vibe. Like how I am with Sue is completely how different than I am with Michelle. But I still am my authentic self, because Sue brings out something different in me, a different side, right? Maybe she's a little bit more chill, or just like, and then with you, I get to giggle and I get to laugh, and both are beautiful. And that's chamber, because you're never going to go into the same chamber group from Friday night into Saturday night. It's going to have a different vibe. So learning how to practice all of this through your first instrument, through your first language of English, Mandarin, Portuguese, whatever your language is, you're honing and you're doing that deep work within you, your primary instrument. So when you put the violin, piano, flute to your face or to your hands, it's just an amplification from what's within.
I love this. I'm really going to have to think about this, because I think it is such a healthy way to approach it. And being authentic in your own voice, not trying to copy recordings, not trying to hit this incredible high perfectionistic standard that we're all chasing, and just saying, hey, what do I think about this? What you said, getting off the page, owning your voice, owning your interpretation, giving what you have to give. I think that's all really beautiful. And that comes through when you walk on stage. Actually, I had Angela Miles Beaching on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she said, this was so interesting to me. She said, when I work with clients and we rewrite their bio to show their authenticity, it changes the way you walk on stage.
Brilliant.
And I really had to think about that, because I'm like, do you walk on stage differently because of how you've written a paragraph about yourself? But it all ties into that identity of, I know who I am as an artist. This is my unique angle. This is what I have to give. And then so when I walk on stage, I know who I am. And I think that's what she was hinting at, but that really stuck out to me.
Oh, beautifully said. I love that connection and that interconnection between the two conversations. I think that's extremely powerful. And I had her recently on my podcast too. And so this is so relevant time-wise. And at the end of my conversation with her, I think we were getting to a unique gem that I had never thought about before. And that's something you said about the bio. That's a written piece of work. She's an author. We are content creators through social media, podcasting, etc. And I think there's something to this notion of seeing is believing. I think if you write out physically, pen to paper, and journal and self-reflect these things. Who are you? What is your vision? What is your mission? And really, again, it's circling back to this nugget I offered earlier. When you do this deep work, because I think, and I'm pretty sure, and I've heard other entrepreneurs say this, and I've come to this, my own conclusion in my own timing through my business portfolio, I truly believe that entrepreneurship is spiritual work. It really is. Like, it's the stuff that you don't see, right? And it's so easy to work on the things we do see, because we do live in this very physical world, right? The black and white, that doesn't lie, etc. But you need to do the deep work as a musicpreneur. You need to. You have to. And I think sometimes, myself included, we kind of push that work away because it requires us to be honest, vulnerable, very authentic. But once we get into that place and we find that, oh, this isn't so bad after all, it is very freeing, because you come and you draw conclusions about yourself and what you're about as an artist through that written work of writing out that authentic bio, writing out your vision statement on your website, etc. So I think that there's some freeing aspect. I think that there is some real validity in doing that deep work with pen to paper and purging out these internal thoughts externally and then seeing it. So whether you are talking about this content through a podcast, writing through a blog, writing out your bio, challenge yourself to do these things, to do this written work from the most honest, intimate, vulnerable place possible. And then everything kind of syncs up towards your end goal.
Yeah, that's so good. There's a lot to unpack there because I'm thinking about the musician who is like, okay, I'm going to be honest with myself. When I do this with my university class, they're like, yeah, but my bio is so thin. I haven't won all the awards. I haven't done all the things, the achievements. And that's what we've been taught is a good bio. Wow, it's so impressive. So this idea of being honest with yourself, knowing your purpose, your vision, I love what changed for me is who are you called to reach? Where do you find your natural strengths? How can you craft that? How can you develop that? Finding the people that have problems that you can help with, and then kind of the path kind of opens up before you, I think. And maybe you can share more about your teaching studio and how the podcast has amplified that, because I know that those two things have gone together.
Yeah, definitely. So I have more of an international studio now because of Flute 360. So it has opened and created doors for me and other flutists globally that would have never occurred if I didn't have an international platform. So I have students in Finland, Canada, Australia, Romania, Greece, Zambia, and of course the States. And it's phenomenal. Wow. And it's just like, pinch me. Here I am. Like, I'm originally from Chicago, but I'm living east of Dallas, Texas right now. And it's in a small country town called Forney. And so I cringe with a lot of love, but I cringe when I hear musicians say, but I'm just a countryside flute studio teacher. Who am I? Like, who would want to listen to me? Who can I impact? And they're thinking, and rightfully so at first, again, we live in a very physical world, but they only see the opportunities maybe that are just right there around the corner and think, well, down the street is a farm and right down the other street is, a mom and pop shop. I can't teach flute and make an impact in this area because there's not a lot of opportunities. And I say, yes, okay, you're not wrong, but let's think outside of the box. Let's get creative. How can you make a statewide impact? How can you make a national, international impact? And we live in this technological world. So you can get creative and have maybe hybrid opportunities, in-person opportunities, purely virtual opportunities. And there's no way a Zambian flutist is going to be able to, commute to Dallas, Texas. But we can do all of these wonderful, great, impactful things through Zoom and through these different platforms. And so anyways, to answer your question, I am very blessed to have different people from the UK and Europe study and work with me because they found my little podcast that I started 6 years ago because they were interested in the same topics as I was, the topics that I wanted to share with them. And we have this common ground and we're like, oh my gosh, we would be, a perfect match to work with one another. So I'm very blessed and fortunate to have those opportunities to impact not just national based flutists, but on a global level as well.
That's amazing to find your audience. A book that really helped me in the beginning was Austin Kleon. I think it's called Show Your Work. And he talks about, earlier artists had to go to Paris, New York, the big centers. They had to go find each other and make their communities and share ideas and exchange. And now we can do all of that online. So he had a very similar thought to what you shared. You don't have to be in the big cities anymore to find your people. You can literally just use a hashtag and start reaching out via the DMs, commenting on others' posts. If you're using social media, you have the podcast that reached the right people. I mean, your target audience is out there waiting for you. And for anyone who feels stuck, I mean, I've heard many musicians say like, oh, I'm just in a small center. I don't know how to find people. There's no one around here. I need to move. And of course, maybe moving is necessary sometimes. But for me too, I'm in like a smaller city in the Netherlands. I've had many people in the past ask me, why aren't you in in Amsterdam, Rotterdam? And like, I don't think I need to be in order to create the impact. I've seen an impact from where I am. I like where I'm living. So, I like my rent prices where I'm living. So it's interesting that you can easily find your people, and you're saying like on Zoom, on our digital platforms, you can work with people everywhere. You can reach them everywhere. I mean, your podcast is reaching 200,000 downloads.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just wild how many people have heard your
Oh,
voice.
thank you. Yeah. And a piece of encouragement for the listener. So they hear that. And thank you for mentioning that. I've been doing the podcast for 6 years and I have over 200,000 downloads. That sounds impressive. And it is. But a lot of hard work went into that. And it didn't start off that way. I mean, basically, I
Yeah.
had 5 downloads for the first couple months where my mom and sister, my husband were listening, you know? And
Yeah.
so this is something you mentioned, Michelle, and in my podcast on Monday, and I'm so glad you did. You may not want to look at the numbers for the first 6-9 months, because if you can
Yep.
focus on why you're doing it and focus on that impact and focus on, yes, maybe right now I don't have that listenership of 2,000-4,000 downloads a month. That doesn't mean that you still can't make an impact for your people, even if it's 5, 10, 15 people, a handful at first, and then with anything, right? It grows with time. And the more you nurture it, the more you cultivate it, the bigger it's going to get, And so you may not,
And
and the consistency, I love that nugget. Yes. And so you may not want to at first look at the numbers, because if you are going to be focusing again on this physical realm of like, oh, well, I'm only getting 15 downloads a month, why even bother? That can change within 3 to 6 months, just like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we deal with this with social media on our end. We have the social media sprint program, and somebody today just started posting because I harassed him enough. And he said, I checked his content. He had 2,600 views per post. And I wrote him and said, that's amazing. And he said, are you sure? It's not so high. And I said, how would you feel if you were singing before 2,600 people?
Boom.
And he said, I've never thought of it like that. Or, 15 people walk up to you and say, hey, I listened to your podcast for 30 minutes. Like 15 people listened to you talk for 30 minutes. How would you feel if they were all standing in a row? You'd be like, oh, wow, I have a crowd.
Yeah.
Like there's people paying attention. I have something to say. And just to get onto the ripple effect, those 15 people are probably going to mention it over their next lunch date of some podcast they were listening to. And that's how things start to grow. And we were talking before we started the show about your legacy and how you are making such a big impact, because both of us are running our companies, our programs, but at the same time, we're also very limited with time and energy. And for me this year, energy management has been huge. I've had to learn, and I'd love to ask you more about how you organize your life with your 4 businesses and your marriage and your family and everything. So being one person, we need to make sure that the people that we're training, equipping, leading, that they can in turn then go lead people around them. So how do you view this, and what are some things that have come up for you around this topic?
Love that. And since we are both believers, I'm going to bring up my faith, and I really focus on kingdom work, because I have to. I have to think about that legacy beyond Flute 360, beyond me and my life of, however long God has me on this planet, because we mean a lot. We hold a lot of value, but we come and go in the blink of an eye. And maybe a lot of this too, maybe, I don't know, because I'm not an actual mother, I really see my students and clients and I adopt them into my family, because as of yet, I'm not nurturing a biological or adopted child to think, oh, this child is going to inherit these different things that Eric and I have built. So instead, because that's not an option right now, I get to throw that energy into my students, into my clients, and think, what do I want to leave them with? What values and morals and life lessons do I want them to have, so that way they can have that ripple effect into their communities, whether it's professionally or personally? And just how you get to impact one individual, it's mind-blowing to know, then how they're going to come in and influence their people who are resonant and resonate with what they have to offer. It's this huge ripple effect. And for me to just be a sliver, just a small portion of that, that's my why. It's like, because the amazing mentors who have molded me, and continue to mold me, I look up to them and I so respect the energy and the effort that they have put into me. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here today, and their lessons and their voice still resonate and still ring in my head, right? And I'm still unpacking a lot of those lessons, even as, a 39-year-old woman. And so just to think like beyond the 90 years that I get to be here on this earth or however long, to think of like what we were saying on Monday, Peter in Zambia and Sana in Finland and Glory in Canada, all these different amazing clients and friends of mine. It's like, oh, wow, they get to impact their music theory people and they get to impact their flute making ability in their company. And it's invigorating and it's really inspiring.
Yeah. And they're filling roles that we don't necessarily have the tools to share about. Like, I mean, I don't see myself coaching other piano teachers, for example. And some of my clients have gone on to create their own piano teacher communities. So being that spark for them to say, okay, I get the concept and now I'm going to take authority and go find my people. This sounds like what you're doing. Then you're able to fulfill so many other roles that you wouldn't have had the time or energy to do on your own anyway.
That's what we were saying pre-recording. Thank you for reminding me. You're only one individual, right? We can only physically get our hands on so many projects, creative projects, and have so many creative outlets. There's only so much time and energy in a day. But if you can kind of instill in, I love that word spark. I'm going to use that from now on. If you can ignite that spark into the Peter, the Sana, the Glory, right? And they go out and light their match so others can see their flame, right? And then it just continues and continues. Then it's worth it because I have a million ideas in my head, but I can't do it all, and we're going to circle back to like managing time and energy and resources in a really proficient way. But I can't get my hands on to all of it. But maybe if Peter resonates with that project or Sana resonates with it and they're like, oh my gosh, yes, I want to take that idea, but put a twist of my own and have my own voice in it and put it out into the world, then it's like, yes, win. Now it's come to life. And even though it didn't come to life necessarily directly through 360, it's an offshoot and more people can benefit. That's a win-win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for what you shared. I'm also not a mom, so I can't speak to our clients who are dealing with raising children and pursuing the freelance career. But Deanna has 2 under 4 right now, and she's due again in April. So like, God bless all the moms and the dads. And the dads, we did have some of our people reach out and be like, hey, we're also like doing the freelance thing and we're dads. So she has writing her blog, and a lot of moms have written us and thanked us for that. So just showing again that we all have specific target audiences. We have people who are going to resonate with our message, the way that we bring the message. And when you believe, as you shared already, in your divine purpose, I really believe that everyone was created with a unique purpose, and there are people that you alone are called to reach. There's something that you alone are called to do. And that's helped me kind of break out of the scarcity mindset where I was comparing myself to all the other pianists and trying to be the best or good enough or whatever it is. And it's like, wait, if I look at what God has given me and the strengths that I have and the unique skill set, then I don't need to compare because no one else has been given this specific combination of how I'm made. And as I lean into my strengths and develop them by stepping out and taking action, by starting a podcast, by showing up on Instagram and talking to my stories every day, by being willing to be seen and vulnerable and maybe say the wrong thing or be, not looking perfect, and have people say the comments that sometimes hurt. Not that I've ever had anyone be outrightly mean, but as a very sensitive person, sometimes you're just like, don't tell me that I look tired, guys. I'm doing my best. You have to be willing to like absorb and keep going. And so much feedback has helped me, letting the comments slide off your shoulders if something has affected you, but like, to choose the path that we're doing, it requires so much grit and perseverance and continually reworking the system, I feel like. And with that, please tell me how you organize your life, because 4 businesses and a marriage, and you're an auntie, and you have church life. So, what does it look like?
Oh my goodness, girl, if you could see my desk and you could see all the Post-it notes around my house, you'd be like, wow. So I will say that the disclaimer is it's a work in progress, and I'm always being molded and edified in this area, and it will never be perfect, but I have found, and I love what you said on Monday, I have found some things that have worked for me. I have found some systems that have worked for me, and I'm willing to share them, even though I don't have all the answers. And I love that. It's so humbling, and thank you for just being vulnerable in that way. So what I would encourage your listener, and we were talking earlier about like one action step. We can talk about that now here with the answer I want to provide you. And this is your action
Yeah.
step for today. And that is get a poster board. Or if you're not a physical person and you like more apps digitally with technology, with some sort of like organization, to each their own. Whatever your platform or medium is, go for it. I'm a very visual person. And if it's not in sight, I will completely forget about it. So if you can go to your local store and get a poster board, I made shift mine. It's just like printer paper taped together 4x4. And I use like these bright neon markers to catch my eye. But there's like 4 main categories in which I've organized my life. Because if there's no sort of system or organization, I feel all of us can resonate with this to some degree. And that is, we are going to feel like we are spread too thin. Who
Yeah.
am I? Where am I going? What's my needle? How am I moving my needle forward? And it can feel really daunting, especially when you are a serial entrepreneur. You're like, wait, where am I? What entity am I in? How am I serving my people? So I don't know about most musicians, but for me, I get really excited about this detailed work. And I think most musicians do, like intonation and the tone color and the articulation choices. So I noticed that I was bringing a lot of that pruning of a small branch tree into my businesses, where I was getting super microscopic laser focused so much on that one branch too often. And now that's good work. That is really good work. Sometimes we need to do detailed work. So if you are feeling, spread too thin, you could be zoned in a little too much, right? For me, I was pruning this one branch and then saying like, why am I not seeing the results? Where are my fruits? And so how I organize my time, money, and resources, they need to all be from this bird's eye view. You need to kind of scale back and take 10 steps back to really see and get a lay of the land. Where are you? What is that vision, mission? What are the pillars? What are the morals? And what are the pillars in your life that you stand for? Who are you as a person? And what's the work that you are actually doing? So that first main row, that first main section for me is kingdom work. And this could be for you, your vision and your mission statement, right? So for me, at the end of the day, if I can do with my time, with my money, with my energy, one aspect towards kingdom work, then I've had a successful day. So what that means for
wow.
me, because I'm not
Yeah.
going to get through all of the list on my to-do list. It's
Yeah.
impossible. And I was beating
Yeah.
myself down like, oh, you're not getting to everything, right? But we can't. There's only so many hours in the
Yeah.
day. But if you
Yeah.
kind of shift your perspective and you focus on big things at the base of the cone and then funnel down to the tip, then you have that lay of the land and go, okay, I did hit all 4 markers today. It was a successful day. So at the base of my cone, if we're talking about a funnel, at the base of my cone and the top of my chart is kingdom work. And what that means for Eric and I is being in alignment with God's purpose for our life, his heart and his mind, right? Yeah, if you're in alignment with God's heart and mind and the purpose and how he's created you, that's kingdom work, everlasting work. And the second main section for me is, I said something earlier about pillars, and you can have as many as you want, but one of my mantras in life is kiss it, keep it simple, smarty. So maybe only 3 to 5 big picture columns or pillars in your life, things that you stand for, things that make you, things that not bring you joy or passion, but just things that you stand for, the morale, right? So
In
our 5 pillars for Eric and I, and don't get too crazy because again, you can overcomplicate this. And I do not mean to overcomplicate this for anybody. And
yeah.
so I can't list off all 5 pillars off the top of my head, but a few of them, maybe I can. Let's see if my memory is good. To be salt and light, to take care of the temples that God has given us, and that is our bodies, so health, bringing others to Jesus Christ, to be in a relationship with him through the Holy Spirit, obviously, and edifying others.
Yeah.
And there's another one. But the point is, if I can do one of those things in one of those pillars, it's been a successful day. And then the third section is just the relationship between husband and wife, me and Eric. And that is a priority. And who am I as a wife? Who am I as a woman? Who am I as a child of God? And remembering that I wear different hats, that I am a daughter, an auntie, a wife, a woman, a child of God, an author, a flutist, just remembering who I am outside of, well, I kind of mushed them together, but outside of my work, who is Heidi? Because our identity, and what I found with a lot of clients, is we identify so much sometimes with our instruments. I am flute.
Yes.
I am piano, right? And I'm sorry, but I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think it is, because what happens when you're taken away from your instrument? Then the ground underneath you is like, oh my gosh, it's shaken, it's unsteady, and you're like, oh my gosh, right? But if you can that's why the order is very specific. My rock is God. My rock is my kingdom work, because things will fall. Like, I may not be able to play the flute for the rest of my life. I've had performance-related injuries, and it scared the heck out of me. Because it's like, I put investments into these degrees, and I've tied up my, everything into being a flutist. Well, what happens when you're no longer a flutist and you can no longer play? So my identity as a woman, then married to Eric, in that marriage, and what we're called to do together, what kind of fruits are we supposed to bring to the table together from our marriage? That's important. And then the last part of the funnel, the tip of it, is the 4 businesses. And so when you look at it from a bird's eye view, then it helps me to focus on the why and big picture elements, because I can easily be and I do detailed work. It's not that that's, you need to do that. But for so long, Michelle, running 4 businesses, I was so laser focused on the 4 entities at the very bottom. And I didn't scale back to see what I'm called to do and things like that. And it needs to be a balance. So when you look at my calendar, when you look at my inbox, when you look at my finances, when you look at my budget, when you look at my time, I think time, money, and energy, it's all a reflection of each other. So if I say health is a priority, that's one of my 5 pillars, but my bank statement says that I'm going to McDonald's and not the local grocery store or gym membership, then you can physically see that the budget and the time do not reflect, right? So that's how I organize my 3 resources: time, money, and energy. And I sit and I see that piece of paper every day. It doesn't take a lot of work. You can just kind of meditate on your 4 columns, maybe 5 minutes tops. Remind yourself of what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you're serving, who you are. And then when you go into the inbox, when you go into and you sit down at your desk, when you go and start working with these clients, you can get super laser focused because you have those pillars and you have that groundwork behind you as you're going into each and every day with new projects, people, etc.
I'm rarely speechless, but that is so helpful. And there's so much in there. I'm going to have to listen back to that. I've heard it explained, having pillars in your day to make today a win, what would make today a success. But you've articulated so clearly this zoomed out perspective of purpose, identity, knowing if I lose everything, I will still be okay because I know who I am and I know who I belong to. Now, as a believer, I belong to Jesus. And he is my identity first. So whether I lose, and I've had massive loss in my life. And then it was really a matter of rebuilding the foundation, that it's strong, that no matter what, through the storm will hold. And I think we can talk, we talk a lot about freelance musician, the instability of that. So when you have this deeper understanding of identity, who you are, not attaching yourself to what you do, your achievements, your worth doesn't come from that. I think that gives you such a perspective of when you wake up in the morning. The to-do list can feel overwhelming. I mean, I had a tough day yesterday. Right before I went on stage, actually, I got some bad news about a project that I'm overseeing, and it was just very, very stressful. And I go on stage, and now I need to play for hundreds of people. And I'm like, okay, wait, what am I doing right now for this next hour? Because in one hand, I'm like trapped on stage for an hour. I can't go solve this problem. And on the other hand, I'm like, wait, I'm called to be here, and there are people here who are going to be massively touched, and I need to put all of my energy and focus on them right now, and completely disconnect from that previous stress. So I think the zoomed out thing helped me the most when I went through a painful season, just getting that perspective. I love that you're setting up your day like this. For me, articulating mission and vision, I don't know why, but my brain like seizes when I try to think about mission and vision, but ChatGPT has become my best friend. So now I just tell it my problems like it's my friend. And I'm like, I'm going to tell it, write me a mission vision statement that I can read every morning. Here's what you need to know about me. Cause I can tell you the things about me. I just don't know how to kind of frame it as like a nice mission statement. I still confuse the two sometimes. I'm like, so that's so helpful. You wake up and you remember like, what am I doing? What's the whole point of this? Why am I running around? Why am I exhausting myself if there's not like a deeper reason behind it? And how can I create these healthy rhythms and healthy systems that I'm going to be sustainable? On Monday, I'm taking 3 days off. I'm going to go into Germany and just like hike and get away. And I always take time to like zoom out and pray through the different areas of my life. And actually, when I did this 6 months ago, that's when I got the idea for the 6-week social media sprint. It just came to me instantly after that weekend. And then it's been one of the most effective programs that we've run, and we've seen the most results from it. So it's so important to like stop the crazy and back up and zoom out and be like, hang on a second, like what am I actually doing here? And I think a lot of creatives get stuck in this running cycle. Next thing, to-do list. I mean, for businesses, for that to be the tip of your funnel, I mean, to me, like that's the whole, like, there's so much, I mean, you just like casually mentioned like, oh yeah, and then the end part is like the 4 businesses. I'm like, that's like 4 target audiences, that's 4 budgets, that's 4 content creation systems, that's 4 of everything. I mean, it's like, and you're just like, oh yeah, and then comes this. But that just shows how you've been able to categorize and compartmentalize priorities. And then you've already shared your lateral thinking. So if I know how to be authentic on stage, well, I know how to be authentic in my podcasting. So all of your businesses, there's crossover strategies that you're using, and it's like Excel sheets go across the board. So it's amazing because then you can be more effective. You're going to reach more people, and you're going to do it in a healthy way because you have health as one of your pillars. I love what you said about making sure your money matches what your vision is. And that's just exactly what we try and tell musicians about investing in yourself. Are you serious about your career? You have to commit. That means you need to get a coach. You need to talk to someone. You had piano lessons your entire life for a reason. You didn't think you could do it on your own. Why do you think you can run your own business on your own? Go talk to someone who's ahead of you. Go talk to people. Go talk to a healthy community of musicians. The Flute 360 community. I mean, I know you guys have your flute conferences. It makes me so happy. Like, and then I get like, I see selfies of everybody tagging each other. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. Like, I want to go to the flute conference just to meet all of you, So yeah, no, thank you for sharing all of that. It's amazing. And I think anyone listening, definitely do that. Get your vision board out. Write down what am I doing here? What am I here for? Like the Barbie theme song. What am I here for? And go to ChatGPT and help it clarify some ideas about what are your strengths? What are you good at? Who are the people that you feel excited about working with? I think that for me has been such a key when people say, how do you do so much? And like, I think I follow my energy. Like I follow the things that make me just come alive and I get excited. Like, I mean, this podcast, this is like, I'm going to be so pumped after this. It's not a to-do item on my list. It's like, I get to talk to Heidi. This is what I'm called to do.
Yeah. No, and it's super fun for me too. And what Michelle is talking about and what I'm sharing right now is go to ChatGPT, go and do the vision board, write these things out. But my challenge for me to you is make sure you're doing it with honesty. Like what you just said, what am I passionate about? What are my strengths?
Yeah.
Who am I supposed to serve? What's missing in the market? How can I get paid? Right? That kind of that Venn diagram in the center of the intersection of those 4 circles, that's where you need to be. But do it with honesty, because I think a lot of my clients, and I don't know if you see this in your business too, we think we need to undergo or take on a creative project because that's what we should be doing. And I'm using air quotes.
Yeah.
So, yes, like follow your mentors, follow their paths as an example. But at the end of the day, it goes back to that authenticity piece. This is kind of one of the themes for today's conversation. And that is, what do you want your output to be? Do you see what I'm saying? Like what lights you up? And you said that so well, Michelle, like what lights you up as an individual? Because, a good example is I love education. I have the educator hat. God called me education. I'm an educator. But I felt like I had to teach every flutist under the sun from 6 to 76. And in Fort Worth from 2009 to 2015, I had 60 students.
That's
60
crazy.
students every week. And I was an adjunct music professor, and I was a member of the Texas Flute Society, a nonprofit organization. I was working literally probably easily 14, 15 hours a day. And it was exhausting. It was thrilling. It was also exhausting. So when I started getting older and I realized I don't have 15 hours a day, like my 40-year-old body just won't let me do that because it's just different. I had to be honest with myself and say, who do you want to teach? And when you're honest with yourself, then I realized like I light up. I light up with any flutist age, wherever you are in life, more power to you, go for it. But we each have our own like flavor of tea, right? That we're drawn to. So my flavor of tea is the gap year flutists. So from 26 to 46, people who are in between degrees, pivoting out of a master's, a DMA degree, pivoting into their business. So now I'm getting very niche and I'm getting very clear on my demographic. And now that's more specific. So instead of 6 to 76, I'm 26 to 46. So all of that to say is the gem in this is get honest with the work that you want to do, because once you're honest with that, then you're going to really light up in those 12-hour days because you're like, I get to talk with Michelle. I get to teach these people. I get to, and then it's more of this like rush rather than feeling depleted at the end of the day.
Yeah. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm so encouraged to hear that you have found your lane in all of these areas. I love hearing the priority that you put on your marriage, on your faith, how you've just built such a healthy, sustainable lifestyle. Thank you for the impact that you're making, all the people that you're reaching, not just through your teaching, but through your podcast. And just so grateful that you took the time to come on today.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I love the work that you are doing. And thank you for your impact. And thank you for being a woman of faith and sharing that. And I'm just in awe of you and your work. And I look up to you and I just cherish our friendship. I really do. I cherish it. And like I was saying pre-recording, to meet another Christian musicpreneur is rare. So I thank you for giving me encouragement and giving me space for us to share these different ideas and topics. And your clients and students and the listeners in your concert halls are so blessed to be touched by you using your God-given talents and skills.
Thank you, Heidi. This has been a real joy to have you on today.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Fearless Artist Podcast. If you found today's episode inspiring, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to share this podcast with a friend. To join our membership or one of our coaching programs, visit our website at thefearlessartistmastermind.com. This episode was produced by Pokey Huang at PH Media Studios in New York City. We're Deanna and Michelle, encouraging you to create your own opportunities and to go after what you want. You have what it takes to build the career of your dreams. Until next time, be fearless.